Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. And a little extra special blog today, one I do quarterly, looking at the either equinox, in this case, the equinox, the vernal equinox, or solstice charts each quarter set for Washington, D.C., and looking at what is in store for the United States for the next quarter in a general political social sense. So this is a little extra one, and it's for people who are interested in mundane astrology. I've always thought this was fun, and I've actually done this as a blog longer than the weekly blog even. I've been doing this for the quarters and solstices for 20 years probably at this point, and I always find it to be very, very revealing. So very interesting, and I just want to let you all remember to that the Astrological Winds channel is a free service, a free blog that I usually do weekly, and it's available on YouTube channel. So if you have a YouTube account, become a follower, turn on your notifications, and you'll get the notification whenever I post the blog, and especially when it's something extra like this, it's good to know. Also available on all kinds of podcasts, so don't forget, you can always check the podcast instead and be freer of the video kind of way of doing the blog. So just look up Astrological Winds channel on your favorite podcast. And remember, it is a free service, so if you can pass it on to anyone, especially anyone you think might be interested in this mundane kind of thing, looking at the next 3 months in the US's chart, set for the vernal equinox here. So, okay, so if you look at this chart, the first thing you'll notice right away is look at all the activity in the 7th through the 9th houses. So that's going to show us right away that a lot of the attention and focus of this next quarter is going to have to do with allies and enemies, international finance and banking, and courts and law and trade and things like that. It's all on the part of the chart that has to do with the US's relations with other countries mainly. So that's where there's going to be a lot of focus, and that's a little bit different than it's been the last few years. There's definitely been a lot of focus more on ourselves, and that is actually even, once again, I'm going to just go around the wheel if you're not familiar with the way I do this. We look at each different house and the rulers of the house, and that helps determine what's going to go on each house, representing a large part of what the U.S. socially is together as a culture or civilization. So looking right away, you see that Virgo is the rising sign in the chart, which means our lord of our chart, or ruler of our chart, this quarter is Mercury, which is all about business and finances and negotiations and information and communication, transportation, things like that. So we can see this is going to be a heavy focus right away for the US, but we have to remember too, what the first house is the state of the nation in general. Like, how do people as like the collective feel about the United States right now? Well, we're feeling kind of Virgo-like. That means we're feeling on the conservative side. We're feeling that we have to be very detailed and stick to some, very, very basic procedures to get through. It's a time where in general you're not really, it's not like necessarily feeling like it's the most abundant time. It's more of a time to be pragmatic and practical and conservative with our resources and what we're doing. And notice, not interestingly enough, Ceres, the asteroid Ceres, is in the first house where it is retrograde. It's one of the and it's right at the critical first degree of Libra, and Ceres represents the basic needs. Are the basic needs being met for the people of the nation? And this shows that most of the people in the nation are under stress for their basic needs being met. What they're used to having is not going the normal way. It's, if anything, sliding backwards. And it's almost looking for some kind of new foothold. But like right now, it has us in this Virgo state of mind, so to speak, in the sense of wanting, in the consciousness of the nation, to just kind of be really pragmatic and to be perfecting, I should say, in our use of our energy and our resources, and trying to just use the best methods and tools and decision-making processes that we know that are available to help us through a time like this. But so what's it coming from? The Mercury in the 8th is revealing some of that. The problem is right now is shared resource issues that are going on that affect the United States, and in particular the 8th house in a mundane chart represents international finance. If there were, one thing that you could sum it all up as, it's international finance. And right now, because of the globalism and what's gone on in the world for decades now through globalism and trade and capitalism, is that we are tied economically as a country to the rest of the world. And so what we're showing here is that this is going to be an area of main concern for us in the next quarter. The international finance, international banking, loans, and money owed and or given out internationally, things like that is really the big thing that the 8th house is all about. So, and we can see also that Mercury, it's right in the beginning of the 8th house, and the sun, which is of course at 00 Aries always when it's the vernal equinox, is conjunct Mercury. And the sun represents the president or the leader of a country, and in our case, President Biden. So this shows that he is going to have to be very, very involved on a subjectively personal level with the negotiations that are going on in the stress area of these 8th house issues. So that shows that, it's something that he may have to be directly involved in the negotiations. Now, it's the 8th house, so that might be secretly going on too. It might not be all out in the open. The 8th house has a tendency sometimes to have a lot of hidden energy in it. But note too, to double that up, literally to repeat exactly almost, Mercury is also sextiling the MC up here in Gemini at 4 degrees Gemini, 420. And so that means that once again, MC represents the president. He is the public face of our nation. And so he has opportunities to actually wield his power through his communications during this time and on the world stage for our country. So that is showing a lot of the energy that's going on. And we can already see, and we all know this, that the economy has been in a very tenuous place since, post-COVID times, because it really started to grow quickly again. And inflation, because of the way we do monetary policy, and the inflation took off very quickly. And now the Federal Reserve has been trying to reel that back in, but that starts to hurt the housing market and it starts to hurt other markets, and the stock market and things like that start to like peel back. So it's a very delicate situation. And of course, we are all choosing to live in an economy where we allow these cycles to happen. So this is what's, gonna be something that is going to be our area of main concern. And we already know, like I said, that this is going on, and you can see that this quarter is going to spend a lot of time on that. And you look right here too, we go into the second house, which is empty, but it's Libra on the ascendant, which means Venus is the ruler of that house. And what is the second house? It's the finances and assets of the nation, and so we're showing with Libra on that there's negotiations that need to go on in order for to have some kind of stability in that area. So it plays right into the same thing the first house and the chart is saying about all that eighth house stuff. And then you look, where's Venus? Well, here she is. She's up here in the ninth house, and she's very strong in Taurus. And it's also conservative in Taurus. She's, very much like this Virgo, like we have to be conservative, go back to the things that we used to do, reel in inflation, that kind of thing, is what she's saying that needs to be done in order to have stability, Taurus, in our assets, Taurus, which is what, once again, Venus ruling that second house, which is all about assets. So that's what she's looking for. And so she's conjunct Juno and the North Node, which means she's looking for partnerships to do that with. So that once again ties right back into the negotiations of Mercury in the international banking and finance and corporate areas that has to have happen in order to have that stability. And so she's looking, U.S. is looking for partners to do this with, and that's our allies, obviously. So there's going to probably be a very cooperative effort internationally to make sure that the economy doesn't tailspin in one way or another, so very, very interesting energy going on there. Then we go to the third house, and it's Scorpio on the ascendant, and which means that Mars is the ruler of that house. And it's interesting because Mars is up here in the 10th house, still in Gemini, where it's been for like 7+ months at this point, because it went through the retrograde cycle, although it is beyond the shadow point. Well, it's getting close to the shadow point where it went retrograde. But the big point with Mars in this chart is it's in a tight square with Neptune. And so this shows here it is, the ruler of the third house, and also the south node is down there in the third house. And this to me shows breakdowns of communications, like confusion in the areas of the education, transportation, information. And when Mars and Neptune are together, it's because there's purposely, coercion through propaganda that's meant to confuse people in these areas. So I think what a lot of that has to do with is it's coming from the difference in the United States in political views, in how to handle some of these very basic third house things like education and transportation and things like that. So in the meantime, Neptune is eroding all those things. Those systems just keep getting worse because we're not doing anything about it. It's like we've reached a state of entropy, and the South Node is showing it's like literally our own karma together that we're not able to overcome, and we're allowing old things to fall into decay, and they've actually are no longer beneficial to us. They're actually hurting us. So like that's literally like the infrastructure of transportation, the school and education systems, the internet, the way, the internet, where we're having a hard time discerning what's true and what's not in there. And then the other big thing about the third house is it represents borders of close other countries. So in this case, Mexico and Canada are the only two countries really that border the United States. And this shows the Mars Neptune that there really isn't like a strong border at all. It's very soft. It's very, nebulous the way it is. And the same with Canada, for that matter. It's like it shows, and then also shows an indecisiveness, once again, because of different ideals. Neptune and then Mars and Gemini, two different ideals, both headstrong about what those ideals are. And here's the president representing one of them. That's also making it confusing enough not to be able to come up with the correct policy for transportation and borders and things like that. So you can see basically what that ends up showing is there's going to be a lot of futile efforts and a lot of not the local energy, not congruent with what's going on in reality and in relation to like a national policy on all those issues. And really the South Node there is really saying we're reaping what we sow, in this area. So that's very interesting there. Then we go to the fourth house, empty again, and Sag is on the cusp. So Jupiter is the big planet in this case, but even Sag on the cusp is making a very, very big statement on the fourth house here. So because the fourth house is basically in mundane chart is all about patriotism, nationalism, the heritage of the country, the history of the country, the past that it was built on, and you can see Sag is there on the ascendant, which is very, ruled by Jupiter, very ideological about patriotism and will blend religion into politics and law and will blend military and religion and politics and law together. So to me, the Sag on the fourth house is going to trigger the United States manifest destiny gene. Remember they taught us about manifest destiny, right? That's what drove the settlers across the United States and from the original 13 colonies so rapidly to take over the whole continent within, less than 70 years. So, and if you know the United States Sibley chart, Sagittarius is the rising sign, which is actually the way the rest of the world sees us. Manifest destiny is like a great way to describe what Sagittarius is all about. So I think our Sagittarian gene is going to be triggered somehow, and we're going to get very ideological. And a lot of times when you see that, the fourth house not only represents that nationalism and patriotism, but it represents movements against the current government because of a more strong push for that kind of energy, that blending of religion and law and military and all that together. And once again, obviously, there's a big, strong movement of people in the United States who represent that part of the political equation. So this, is very interesting. And then what's going on with the Jupiter, the ruler, is it's conjunct Chiron and Vesta and Eris in the 8th house. So this is pretty dangerous stuff here. This is like letting ideological groups create chaos that ends up hurting or damaging the homeland. So this is very, very interesting energy here. There's a lot of stuff coming to fruition right now in relation to the last administration that a lot of people are still attached to ideologically, which is that Sag and Jupiter. A lot of it could be blind faith or misled. There's a lot of togetherness in it, and it creates a lot of chaos, the forcing of change, and this can definitely create a lot of, wounding across the nation. And in here too, it shows it can also, play into some of the issues we end up having with with economics and international alliances and relationships. So very, very interesting energy going on there for the empty 4th house. Then we go to the 5th house, and it's Capricorn on the ascendant, and it's got Pluto in there. So Saturn is the ruler of that, and that is the house of entertainment and art and things like that. And I think with Saturn on there and Saturn just freshly into Pisces, I think one thing for sure is that people won't have as much to spend on entertainment and art. Like, they're gonna have to be more frugal, which goes back to the Virgo and the finance stuff in general. So I think like those industries are going to have to be a little bit more frugal with what they're doing, but they're also going into a territory too where Pisces is the ruler of a lot of artistic stuff. And so bringing structure and form to different ideas artistically. Now, Pluto's in there too, which is very interesting because, to me, that may show some ugly, shadowy stuff in the entertainment and sports world. And I think you see a lot of this stuff where people are exposed, an athlete driving 140 miles an hour, after winning some thing and creating some kind of accident. There seems to be a lot of those kind of stories, or entertainers being involved in some nefarious criminal type activities. So Pluto in there shows there's a possibility of that, or even seeing the power that the entertainment industry has and the pop industry has over people, and that being something that is being used by those in power also, and maybe having the ability to see those kinds of things. And we go to the 6th house, which is also ruled by Saturn and has Saturn in it. So it's very interesting. You got the double Saturn here and Saturn in Pisces. So this is all about, the authorities. The 6th house is about the civil servants, the military, the police, people like that, their role, those who serve society in their regular, everyday routine or job. And here we have Saturn, where these people are given authority, but it's in Pisces now. 2 different ideologies fighting over how those people are supposed to perform their job. So then it brings in the Pisces energy of confusion over how that should be done. So I think there's going to be a lot of confusion over and idealism over the roles of the police and the military and civil servants, and what exactly is their responsibility, and I think they are going to be confused themselves. Those members of those 3 groups who work in those areas are going to be very unclear as to what is really wanted by them, and so very interesting energy going on there too. And now we get to that part of the chart I talked a little bit about already, because it's so loaded, that 7th, 8th, and 9th house. So the 7th house represents our allies and our open enemies, as a country. And here we have Pisces on the ascendant, which makes once again Jupiter the ruler. And it shows that there is, Jupiter with this Eris and Vesta and Chiron there are some staunch differences going on in the world right now. Jupiter and Vesta have two ways of looking at the way the world is supposed to be going as far as international politics. And now Eris is throwing a lot of chaos in there, and Chiron is in there too, causing wounding to the world. And it's very interesting. I think, what did President Xi of China last week said something about how the U.S.'s form of government is not what is accepted in a lot of the rest of the world. So that's the kind of thing that, is causing a lot of issues and confusion here. And here we have, on top of that, both lights, both the sun and moon, are in the 7th house, and Neptune is in between them. So basically, Neptune is causing all kinds of confusion with our allies and our enemies, not sure what to do. And the sun shows that the president is involved, that he's unclear as to what to do, and he may actually be being deceived by certain allies. And the moon shows that the people of the country are being affected by what's going on with our enemies, and that the security of the common people are being affected by what's going on with our enemies and allies. And we have some allies that are, a lot of this has to do, obviously, with the conflict going on between Russia and the Ukraine, and, how it's a very confusing mess that we're in the middle of. And we have allies that are, wanting to, arm and push Ukraine. And then we have, there's another whole block of countries that are not willing to go along with what the United States and NATO want, and are still working with Russia. So there's a lot of confusion. And some of those countries that are working with them have been countries that work with us too. So there's a lot of confusion in this area. And you can see it's a very stressed time for us, and a lot of confusion for us, and a lot of pain. And we've talked about the 8th house a lot. This is going to be a time where, the economy, international finances are in stress. And, you have Mercury in there. Going to have to do a lot of negotiating. There's going to be painful things going on, a lot of chaotic things going on. It's quite possible the economy could tailspin out at this year, or this quarter, globally. And there's no question that there's a really good chance that could happen. And that Mars in Gemini shows there's an indecisiveness. The ruler of the house shows there's two different ways of approaching it. It's very hard to decide. The square to the Neptune makes it even more confusing. Square to the Ceres, showing that people's needs are not being met, brings up anger, and it's being projected at the president, which is usually what happens when the economy goes bad. Then we look into that 9th house, which I've also looked at a little bit too already. And like I said, we've got Venus very strong in there, ruling the house, and in that house, conjunct Juno in the North Node. And I think when you think about the 9th house, it's the ideologies of the nation, the religion, the values, the legal system, the universities, the way things are taught. Also has to do with shipping and things like that. And so here, I think there's a conservative move on this energy to try to go back to the things that we valued the most and create partnerships there. But then you look in the house, and who's in there? Uranus is in there, and that shows that people are going to be upset, shook up by some of the legal decisions that the courts make, that by some of the, things that are going on the level of legal systems and the blending of religion into the legal system, or people's values taking away their objectivity. It's very interesting there. And then Mars and the 10th house. And the 10th house is the executive branch, the president. We've talked a lot about him. It's ruled by Mercury. He's going to be involved in a lot of negotiations this quarter, especially about the finances and the war. And there's going to be, a lot of decision making, which may be hard to do because Gemini is, it's headstrong and it can go back and forth. With Mars and Gemini, it's headstrong and it can go back and forth, and it can be confusing, square to the Neptune. And, he has to be very careful in jeopardizing the nation's ability to take care of itself and be secure. And you look to the 11th house, and that's Congress. And Congress is ruled by the moon. In this house, it's got Cancer. And so Congress, same issue, Congress is really stuck on some old ways of looking at things. Cancer is that kind of looking at the past. It's kind of almost like a, for want of a better term, a 1950s way of looking at the world that's not really happening. And so what's going on? It's causing confusion. Moon conjunct Neptune. There's the ruler of the chart. And it's confusing our allies. And it's confusing our enemies. They don't know what to think. And it's also confusing the common people. So Congress is basically a mess of confusion, and that's what it will be for the next quarter. And then we go to the last house, is the 12th house, which are large institutions, basically, that, the large institutions of the government that serve all of us, serve the collective. And here we have the sun ruling that house. Leo is on the cusp. So once again, it's almost like the executive branch feeling like they have to take control of a lot of these situations. They're going to have to do a power thing on a lot of these situations, but there's negotiations involved. There's a lot of confusion. So, things like prison reformation, or how to deal with the health cares, public health care situations, things like that. There's a lot of confusion and not sure what to do. And the executive branch may try to, basically do some orders to make things work there. So a very interesting chart. I think we're really going to be focused on international economic issues and international war issues stemming out of the Russia-Ukraine thing, and that there's going to be a lot of legal things that, are upsetting to people too. And that's where a lot of the focus of the United States will be this next quarter. Okay, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. It's a free service on YouTube. Become a follower if you have an account. Turn on your notifications. You'll know when it's set up. I also have it set up on Instagram, and I post the links there. Just look up Astrological Winds channel. Become a follower. It's also on all kinds of podcasts distributed through Buzzsprout. Just look up Astrological Winds channel and you will find it. If you don't find it on one, look it up on another. I know it's on there in about 20 of them. Otherwise, if you need to get in touch with me for any kind of reading, the best way to get me is matthue823@gmail.com. That's my email, matthue823@gmail.com. I've been a professional astrologer for 20 years, give all kinds of readings, and I can give classes and lectures on things like this. So if you have an event you'd like to do, and I also have some classes available, all those things, just email me one more time, matthue823@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the blog, please pass the link on to somebody else. Thanks for all the feedback, and I'll see you guys on the weekly next week, and we'll also look at the month of April's first look.